We'll begin with
we have 0 Zoom participants right now.
Good evening. Thank you so much for having me. Do I just sneak this guy? Thank you. So this is our annual opening meeting for the financial statement audit. It feels like we were literally just here, and we were, right? So our audit for fiscal year 22 was kind of out of the usual pattern that financial statement audits go, but we're back on track. So we're here on fiscal year 23. So this is our official report to council. My name is Abby Hagerman. I'm the signing engagement partner for the City of Laramie's audit opinions that we will have issued by the end of the calendar year, which is required by state statute. So we're here today because professional standards require us to communicate to those charged with governance our responsibilities. Oftentimes we work so closely with the finance department that sometimes we forget to tell those who hired us what's going on. So thankfully the professional standards ensure that we communicate to you our responsibilities and your responsibilities with respect to the financial statement audit. So we're happy to be here again. This is year 2 as Klinger Hagerman. We're actually on site this week. We've begun our preliminary field work. So if any of you have any questions following this meeting and you don't catch me this evening, we'll be in the annex room for most of the week. And then we'll return again in October for our official field work. So the scope of the work that we perform is first and foremost the financial statement audit. So the financial statement audit is what we're engaged to perform, and that's so that we can look at the information, the underlying financial records, to provide an opinion about whether or not your financial statements are presented in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles, or GAAP. We're doing that as of June 30, 2023, which is the period that just ended. Our work is performed under generally accepted auditing standards. It's just a bunch of alphabet soup here. But because you guys are unique in that you are a governmental entity, besides the financial statement audit, we also do conduct additional work. We do look at the internal controls of the city, and actually the city should be really proud. Not every entity is capable of this because you guys have a system of internal controls which can be relied upon. We do use your internal controls to help us aid in the testing and gaining that opinion that the financial statements are free of material misstatement. However, we're not allowed to give an opinion on your internal controls. We're just there. We can use them in our risk assessment to help us guide our procedures. Because you are a governmental entity, we are required to audit you under governmental auditing standards. And the little piece to that is, yes, we look at internal controls. If we were to come to light about something that wasn't correct, or there was an error maybe that occurred inside of an internal control process, we would communicate that. We also have very specific guidance on that we have to look at laws and regulations, right? Governments are, full of that. We got statutes to follow, internal policies, ordinances, resolutions, all the things. So we're looking at those inside of our audit engagement as well. And we would report to you and inside of our financial statement report if we had anything that was, material non-compliance with some of those matters. The last piece, so the third component of the audit collectively, is the uniform guidance or the single audit. Because the city of Laramie expends more than $750,000 in federal funding during the year, they're subject to the uniform guidance. This is where we look at the federal awards that were spent during the year, and we do this little calculation, and we test specific programs that you spent money on. So for fiscal year 23, for example, we're testing your ARPA money, which you're currently the American Recovery, I can't remember what it stands for, Act. This is where we're using money from our revenue lost revenue that they awarded us money for, and it's specifically for your water and your wastewater infrastructure projects. We did test this program last year. You, like many other municipalities and other governmental entities, received a lot of this money. It was part of the COVID package and CARES that came out during the pandemic. That money was actually put into the coffers of the city several years ago, and you as a council have been deeming with your direction what you believe to be appropriate for those uses. So we'll be testing that for fiscal year 23. When we test that, we're looking at specific compliance requirements that are provided to us by the Office of Management and Budget from the White House that tells us, specific items with respect to is an allowable cost, maybe it's reporting, could be matching, there could be special tests and provisions associated with that, and we are required to give an opinion on that. So you get an opinion over your financial statements, an opinion over your single audit work, and then we would conclude if we had any findings regarding the work that we did with respect to your internal controls. So what are the responsibilities inside of a financial statement audit? I have responsibility, and you as the council and members of management also have responsibilities. The big laundry list of responsibilities, of course, is listed in our audit engagement letter, but I think it's very important that we talk about these so that we make sure that we're in a conversation in a two-way street where you understand what's expected of me and you understand what my responsibilities are as well. So as you as a council and members of management, it's your job to help ensure that the city is designing, implementing, and establishing an internal control structure that allows for the fair presentation of your financial information to the fact that it's not, that it's free of material misstatements. So it's fair, accurate, timely, and reliable, that you're following laws and regulations. And we're making sure, and we talked about that single audit, that if you have government programs, that you're establishing those policies and procedures to assure that we're in compliance with those requirements of the program. You would be expected to communicate to me if there was any known or suspected fraud. During our audit procedures, we're required to reach out to those charged with governance, so one of you gets nicely selected each year, whether some of you may not know that, but we do talk to members of council and ask them if they have any areas of concern, if they do know of any known or questioned costs or fraud. Obviously, that's your expectation, is for you to tell us that. Otherwise, I don't have the full picture when I'm building the risk assessment to do the audit. And then make sure, we talked about that information that you're giving is reliable and timely for the users of the financial statements. And like I said, the big, laundry list is also included in that engagement letter in case you're looking for some nice light reading. What are my responsibilities? My responsibility as your auditor is to express the opinion on whether your financial statements are free of material misstatement. That seems kind of short and sweet, but that comes twofold. As long as I have cooperation from you and from management, then I can go forth and proceed with my professional guidance and structure to be able to hopefully provide that unmodified opinion that the financial statements are correct and accurate. My audit of the financial statements does not relieve any of you from your responsibilities or duties that we talked about earlier. So the actual audit itself, there's an audit strategy. An audit is a risk-based approach. I'm providing you with reasonable assurance, because absolute assurance just isn't practical, right? I would literally have to look at every single transaction to go through the year. So to keep us from having to do that, right, then we do a risk-based approach. So we're looking at different areas inside of, what does the control structure look like? What is your control environment? What's the attitude at the tone of the top? How does the city present itself, policies and procedures, that we use all of those to create our judgment on how we think it would be best to look at the financial statements of the city to ensure any areas that maybe we consider potentially more risky don't have any areas of non-compliance or misrepresentation in the financial statements. When we look at this and we talk about nature, timing, and extent of our procedures, we're going through and we're deciding which financial statement areas do we need to look at, how much do we need to look at, what types of testing we're going to do, and that's all affected in trying to decide whether we could have these material misstatements. And material misstatements can occur from an error, which it happens, we're human, right? Sometimes those things happen. Fraudulent financial reporting, misappropriation of assets assets, and then any violations of laws or other government regulations. So if we're made aware of any of these types of items, that definitely changes the nature, timing, and extent of our procedures, right? If we start seeing red flags and you guys are all calling me and telling me terrible things are happening, and we get in there and you tell me you don't have any controls or processes, I'm probably going to do more testing. But when the books are in order and controls are well established and are being followed, then we can reduce our testing to really hone in on more specific areas that could be of concern. If we come to any situation that has significant issues or rise for concern, it is our job to communicate them to you. If we have things in the normal course of audit, we would communicate those items to you at the end or the conclusion of the audit. If we were ever in a situation where something was of dire importance to communicate, we would communicate timely. Only time that I really see this happen is if we weren't allowed to gain access to the information. For some reason, we just couldn't in good faith provide our opinion. You guys would be immediately informed of that. But typically no news is good news, so you hear from us at the end of the audit. So I talked a little bit that our audit focuses on higher risks of higher area. So what does that mean? How do you know it's a higher area? We look at prior year audits. Thankfully, we have knowledge in the sense I've been with the City of Laramie's financial statement audit for a long time. So I know what's been going on in the past. I've seen some of the struggles. We're involved in the community. We look at prior year audit findings if they are them. We look at how they've been resolved. And we look at something called inherent risk. And inherent risk is a really big word, but really inherent risk is like what just is the nature of something that is difficult? Is it complex? Is it detail oriented? Does it have a lot of laws and regulations? If you guys think about when you were doing your ARPA, do we want to do wastewater? Do we want to do water? That was inherently more tricky, right? We had to make sure we were in compliance. There was a lot of guidance that was changing all the times. So that's kind of inherent risk. The risk that it's just the nature of its being makes it more complex. We look at recent develops inside of the industry, and we also look at recently issued or effective accounting principles that are currently being implemented. Last year, we had the implementation of probably one of the largest changes in governmental accounting since the big pension ones, which was your GASB 68, which had to do with leases. There's a piggyback one that continues for fiscal year 23, which is GASB 96, which is subscription-based IT services. So similar things. They're both with regard to leases. The first one was more of your traditional leases, copiers, buildings, cars, those types of things. This second kind of bolt-on that we're doing this year is all about if you have cloud-based services, your ERP implementation, we have to look at what are the costs associated with those items. So when we have changes that come about, the risk is greater, right? We've never seen this before. It's important for you guys to understand anytime we have these changes and we're looking at how did we used to present something to how are we presenting it now, it is a chance that there could be findings that happen, and it's not a reflection of how well an organization, is functioning. It's just new and different, and maybe we, hadn't looked into something or understood it fully in the past, but now that we re-drummed it up, new information has come to light. So hopefully the GASB, who issues out these really fun implementations, pumps the brakes and slows down, because I feel like the poor finance team has had a lot of change to go through on top of handling very gracefully the ERP implementation. But those are all things that we take into consideration when we're looking at that. If the city had any major changes in their policies, how are they capitalizing things, are they using a different threshold, we would take into consideration. If there were major turnovers in personnel, that's something that would cause us to maybe modify our risk assessment. But those are just kind of the items that we look at when we develop that audit strategy. So it's a lot of making sure that we understand how the city functions as a whole. Otherwise, we're making assumptions about things that we don't understand in the whole picture. So the planned scope of our audit. So when we went through and we looked at the inherent risk and the change in things and what's going on inside of the city this year, here are the things that we're looking at. First one up there, fraud risk. Don't freak out. Fraud risk is just, it's always there, right? That's just, it's in the professional standards. That's required for us as auditors to always say we got to be professionally skeptical that there could be fraud involved. Internal controls over financial reporting, that's an important one. It's kind of always there as well. We have changes going on with all these new principles coming out, so there's risks associated with that. Revenue recognition is always a risk for an auditor when we come into an entity. It's just hard to know, when should I call the cash that came in the door, is that revenue? Well, yeah, but when should we have recognized that? Or we haven't had cash come in the door, but it is revenue on the books. So that's just a tricky area with a lot of judgment. Talked a little bit about it's the implementation of the new standard for GASB 96, and then subsequent events. A subsequent event is when we look at anything that happened after June 30, 2023. That's the period under audit. If anything major has changed, we need to decide, does that have an impact on the financial statements, and should we make adjustments for those? Our overall audit timeline, we are here, right? We are here, we're meeting about it. Like I said earlier, we're actually on site this week, doing some of our preliminary work, doing our control testing that I mentioned earlier. We're doing some of that single audit work with respect to ARPA. So we'll be pretty busy working through all of this. Our goal to work really closely with that finance team to make sure we're being respectful, to keep in line with that ERP implementation deadline. They're being so flexible, and we just really appreciate it. We know how hard they're working. The goal is to be back on track, which is that report is going to be done late November for final things to be wrapped up, bows to get on there, so that we can all have Christmas around December 15th, and that will be submitted to the GFOA for your Certificate of Excellence in Financial Reporting, and also to the state to be in compliance with state statute. It would be remiss of me to not talk about independence when we're talking about an audit. That is what makes an audit so special. Me and Klinger Hagerman, as your auditors, must be independent of the city. So there are very specific things. Are we independent in appearance and in fact? There's a whole framework inside of the AICPA guidance that we have to ensure that we're not impeding that. That would include you guys. We ask, management, do you guys have any related parties? Is there anything we need to be aware of? So that's taken very seriously. If there's ever a breach in independence, or we feel that even in appearance it doesn't seem to be there, it means our audit opinion can't have any worth, right? So those are very specific items that we always have to watch for, and we document them. Independence is always important for any audit opinion. It's extra important in governmental auditing standards. So we have to make sure that we have specific CPE that's, for what's called Yellow Book. So it's all your governmental regulations to help us reinforce and make sure that everyone on our audit team understands that we must be independent. This is our audit service team. It's pretty much the same as last year. We do have a new team member. His name is Ross. We moved him here from Chicago. He thinks that Wyoming is pretty great, but he told me it's really chilly here in the morning. And I was like, well, just wait. It won't be as cold as Chicago when December rolls around. So we're really excited to be here. When I presented last time, my partner, Micah Klinger, was still living in Star Valley. He's officially relocated here, so he wasn't able to be with us tonight, but we're just excited for the opportunity to continue to serve the city, and I really think it's going to be nice for us to be back on track, and I think we've got a good solid plan. So at this point, I would open the floor if anyone has any questions that they'd like to ask regarding the audit process.
Councillor Doherty.
Thank you for this again, and for making it so digestible. And I think I asked the exact same question last time, but the internal controls, do they help you do the stratified sampling of where you need to, so it's like a test within the testing method to help you see the areas that you need to do more sample?
Yeah, so like I said, the city has very nice internal controls. So we go through and we identify specific kind of business cycles or processes, and based on, and we cross our fingers, if we can get through that testing and show that the city complied with all of that, what happens is it reduces the need to do other types of testing elsewhere. That other type of testing is sometimes more cumbersome. it's more ask sometimes of your finance department or other areas if we're looking inside of single audit. So the better controls we have, the more we can rely on other areas inside the financial statement to reduce that testing. So it's our favorite thing when we can come here and test controls. It's also nice, the methodology allows us to rotate, so I'm not bombarding the staff year over year testing the same stuff. We can reduce testing and kind of cycle through. So we test one, like this year we're testing non-payroll expenditures more this year. Next year it'll be payroll that gets hit. So it kind of gives them a break. And I think it also helps, that those teams understand the importance of keeping those controls intact, because it means less audit work that has to go on when we show up.
Any other questions? No comments?
I have a comment. It sounds like...
Councilor Richardson?
Thank you, sorry, jump in before you acknowledge me, but it sounds like you, finance team, have a great system in place, so I just want to thank you and congratulate you for your work, because I know it's, well, I don't know, I'm assuming it's a lot, I should say, so thank you.
All right, thank you all so much. We'll see you in a few months when there probably aren't leaves on the tree, so thank you.
And what we'll do now is, are there any public comments? I don't see anyone online except for Councilor Somerville is in the waiting room.
Yeah, I tried to promote her a few times and it hasn't.
Responded, okay.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. We really appreciate your report, your work, and I agree with Councilor O'Doherty for making it so digestible and understandable.
Thank you, that's our goal. Accounting, sometimes we come up here and everyone's like, I don't know what they're saying, it's a bunch of Greek. So I'm glad to know it was digestible. That's a great way to say it. So thank you all so much.
Thank you. Our next topic, community partner funding, a review of the application, vetting, and award process. City Manager.
Thank you, Vice Mayor Cumby. Council, this evening we're responding to your request to have a work session where we review the process the city has used for many years to solicit and review applications for community partner funding, and ultimately the process that you as a council use, and it is wholly your process, the process you use to make awards to those outside agencies or community partners. Just to introduce Nancy Oakland Potter, as you know, Nancy is the executive assistant to the city manager, and she oversees that process. So Nancy's going to be presenting to you tonight. One thing I'd like to emphasize out of the gate, though, before Nancy comes up, is our community partner funding is actually coming from your fifth penny general purpose sales tax, and it has always come from that fifth penny sales tax insofar as I'm aware, and so that takes us back to, I think, the mid to late 80s when that tax was first established. It's a program that we're able to offer because that tax is approved every year by the voters, and as you know, we do allocate hundreds of thousands of dollars every year to the program, to the community partners, and then also to our economic development contractual partners, which is the Laramie Chamber Business Alliance and the Laramie Main Street Alliance and the Laramie Regional Airport. So with that, I will let Nancy walk you through the process that she goes through each year. She's also going to share with you some findings from survey of other cities in Wyoming. We thought we'd see what they do and share that with you as well. Nancy?
Thank you, Nancy.
Thank you. Good evening, Admiral.
See, that goes up and down if it's too tall for you.
You're saying I'm short.
No, I'm not making any value judgments whatsoever.
Good evening, Honorable Council members. As Janine mentioned, the monies that we use come from the fifth penny and has been for a number of years. At your request, we did reach out at the end of August to our YOCMA group, which is city managers and town admins. We're looking at about approximately 18 emails that went out, and we received 6 responses. So as you can see, the program overview, it just kind of tells you again what Janine had said, that this is all through the Fifth Penny, and that these are the various organizations that we generally consider giving awards to. Our processes start in November when we review the documents, update them for the upcoming year. I reach out to the county, the county clerk and work with them and with the city clerk, Nancy Bartholomew, to create that joint meeting, which we do the review of those applications. And so you just kind of have a little overview of what we do in November. December is when we just finalize everything and we update our web pages and get our drafts and everything in a row. January is when we do our announcements of the awards. We do the press releases. I also do a courtesy to our past awardees so that they know that the application acceptance period has been opened. And then we do another reminder of when the deadline is pending. The deadline acceptance period is usually the Tuesday after President's Day, and then we begin scheduling those 5-minute presentations, that joint meeting between yourselves and the county commissioners. In March is when I work with City Manager Jordan, where we put together that memo that kind of outlines things for the information that is being recommended to you as far as like the awards and things like that. And then we have that, you have that meeting, you get the presentations, and then we give you that spreadsheet that each of you inserts your recommended amount. And through those amounts that you provide us, we average them out, and that is what is determined to be the award amount for the applicant. In April, you bring through a resolution to authorize that funding, and based on the availability of the funds through our budgeting processes. And then in May, we notify them of what their award is, again, pending award funding availability, and then you do an adoption of the budget in June. And through this process is they not only just apply and then they give their agreement, there's also the follow-up of when they give us their final reports, which has a July deadline, mid-July. And so I keep track of all that on that master spreadsheet that you guys get to see a portion thereof. And so that's pretty much in a nutshell how we go through our processes, just as a reminder. And then we also encourage the awardees to use our Fifth Penny logo in any promotions of those projects and events and things like that that they're doing, so that the community is aware of, the power of a penny. So we all know that slogan. So our first responding was from Lander, the assistant mayor there, provided us information in that they used to have a program, however, it was dropped in 2010, and now their funding is restricted to the County Juvenile Justice, Chamber of Commerce, and the Golf Course Joint Powers Board. And they can request those monies, and it doesn't appear that they have like an application process. And again, it's restricted through their agreements, and they do MOUs. They have an additional $100,000 community development line in their general fund that's developed by or managed by their community develop coordinator, and those line items are initiated by that coordinator and requires an MOU and a partnership or benefit as defined. She did note, as you can see, that Fremont County still has an account for community groups and nonprofits that's done through a process. And when I looked it up, it looks like it's the Move project that uses their half penny for that. Did you have any questions on the Lander response? No? Okay, so Casper gave us quite a bit of information. The first, they have two fundings. The first one is similar to our Albany County Rec Board in that it supports community promotion programs, and they partner with Visit Casper, and generally they commit to $25,000, and a lot of that is in kind and also cash grants. And the way that it was explained to me, so like when they have a big soccer tournament that comes in, they give some gratis hotel rooms or maybe reduced rate, or they offer them, reduced fees for utilizing the facilities and things like that. So that's how that program works. And the money is paid directly to Visit Casper, and they then disperse the monies or, give the in-kind and expect receipts for such as those types of awards. And they have applications that are accepted and awarded, and as you can see, they have a board that reviews all of these applications, and it's comprised of two Visit Casper board members, 2 council members, and 1 staff from Visit Casper Board and the Casper Council. So their second program, which is similar to the city in that their Fifth Penny supports the program, and they actually do a 4-year program, whereas we do an annual application process. So that is quite different from what we do. And their award amount in that 4-year period is $2 million. And the way that I understand it, I'm kind of going off script here, is that, so they have that $2 million in that 4-year period, and they award a certain percentage so long as the funds are in hand. And when they take all of these applications, they kind of review them and piece them together like a little puzzle. We're going to take this one, we're going to fund it this year, that year, or this year. And that's kind of the way that they go through it as far as their determination of awards and who's going to get them and when they're going to get awarded. And they go through a different process in that they deliberate, and they do this in their public meetings, and they come to a determination of how much they're going to fund of that application, right? It may not be the full thing, it may be a specific part of it, and if they have like certain equipment, they may decide that they're going to fund that equipment, and they'll work on like the stipulations of it. They'll just follow those processes and specify what they're allowed to purchase and go through the specs of the product. So in their new year that they just started, 23 through 28, they approved 26 awards during that application period. So for the next 4 years, they have 26 applications that they've approved for the $2 million that they've set aside. Okay, and their timeline processes are similar to ours in that they start accepting the applications in and then in mid-March, that's when they do their presentation, similar to ours, in which they do a 3 to 5 minute process presentation. And then the unique thing that they do is they have an elimination round. So when they get these applications, people give their presentations and they look at them. And like I said, they came to a determination of what they were going to fund and whatnot, but they also do an elimination where they may, eliminate an applicant, and that's if they only get less than 5 votes by the council. So they have to get the support of 5 or more in order for their application to be accepted and move on to the next portion of the award process. So anybody that receives less than that would then be eliminated. Go ahead, Councilor Pierce. Oh, sorry.
Is that okay, Councilor Pierce? So in Casper, do they have a division similar to ours? The quasi-governmental, the different areas, or do they just take them all as one group, they don't break them out like we do?
No, it doesn't appear to. It seems like they take a pile of applications, whatever is submitted, and they present what it is that they're going to use the monies for, but there is no stipulation, like you said, we break it down into the quasi-government. We have the recreational and the social services type things. I would guess that they probably would get, a little bit of any of those, but I don't know that, and you'll see in like some of the other ones where I saw that they specifically stated it isn't for individuals, it isn't for, they may restrict it to nonprofits and things like that. I didn't receive that specific information that stated that. I could certainly look more into it if you'd like.
I think for now, for me personally, this isn't enough to digest, but I think maybe at the end, we might have come up with some consensus of questions, but for now, I'm.
Sure.
Councilor Richardson.
Thank you. I think, so one of the people who works at the city there, I had asked her about their process because she's on our Casper local board. And she said they do, from what she told me, and I'm not totally sure if this is correct, but she had said that they utilize, how we set our goals at the beginning of the year. That is how people can apply. So if they can apply based on the city's goals, if they align with the city's goals, then that's an easy way to kind of weed out things that maybe don't align with the work.
Because one of my questions when we were through with this is, did any of these communities come up with like a definition or guidelines for applicants? So, and that kind of gets to the purpose of the funds. So, okay, so sorry.
No. And some of the groups did. They had like those stipulations. I did not get that information from them, but it just may have just been missed. We had a lengthy conversation on the phone, and then she followed up with some information via email. But that piece may have just been missed. So, yeah. So then, again, like I said, they go through that elimination round, they compile the votes, and then they are given a voting sheet with the amount of funding that should be awarded, and then they turn the sheets into the staff, and they're later presented to council in work session, and they discuss the sheets, and they can change and amend the amounts just depending on, again, because they have to do that funds in hand thing, they kind of, again, do that, where are we going to fit it and release those payments. Contracts are then drafted up by staff in May. They're reviewed and approved by the attorney's office, and then formally approved by council in June. So that would be Casper. Kemmerer said they did not have such a program. And then Douglas provided us some information in that they do have a program, and it's a joint process that they developed with their county. And again, it's similar to Casper in that they said not every single application is applicable to both entities, and some may not make it to the award stage. So it's just dependent on, they have, again, an application where they request different things, status letters, liability insurance, financial statements. So a few of the things that we request for, but similar, but not exactly. And they also gave out in fiscal year 23, $760,900, and 24, $980,250. And again, they just have that same application process where they publish the information in February and again in March, and then have the applications accepted through April. In the town of Afton, they use the funds from the general fund for community development, and these are the ones that again, they say to nonprofits and partnering government agencies. So there, they kind of regulate it a little bit. They do not, however, send out invitations to request funding, nor do they not require an application for the funding. They receive the requests, so people pretty much just kind of openly submit a request for some funding. And let's see here, before the first reading of the budget, during the open meeting, the council receives requests from community agencies providing services to the town. So again, like they said, local food pantries, senior citizen centers, animal shelter, again, those nonprofits and partnering government agencies. And they consider the requests during the budget sessions. They do say that the agencies must demonstrate a need for the request and funding and must come back and report on the funding usage, which is similar to what we do. And again, everything is done in a public forum.
Having a hard time.
Oh, sorry. Okay. And so then the city of Powell responded that they are similar to the town of Afton in that, but they do utilize an application form. So they require, and here again, we talked about those stipulations. They have to satisfy a minimum criteria, which they provided me that information. And item 3, again, lists that funding is not guaranteed. So again, there's a similarity in that there's a possibility of elimination if not meeting that minimum criteria that they are setting forth in the application. And so again, they're reviewed, they have a deadline, April 1st, and then they have the recommended budget funding for the proposed budget. So they kind of, again, go through the amount that is requested, how does it fit into budget. So it follows the similar processes. And then they just said that council comes to an agreement on how much each of these requests, and let's see here, how much, and so the council comes to an agreement on how much to fund each of those requests. So it's a determination. It's kind of, similar to the process that we do. Everybody puts in a determination of what they want to do, but we go a step further and do an average out. They just seem to come to some sort of determination of how much they're going to give. Their general purpose funding of $4,000 or more, it's paid, so when they give the funds, they pay it out on a quarterly basis, whereas we pay it out all at once we receive their completed agreement. And they don't use a contract for the award, so they don't use an agreement like what we do. And in fiscal year 22-23, they awarded $187,900 from their general fund budget. And that is the information that I've collected, and I would be happy to do more follow-up for you if you have any additional questions that you want to ask regarding their processes.
Councillor Shumway.
Thank you, Your Honor. Nancy, you have done a lot of work, and this is very, very good for us to give us some new ideas and new insights into this. As harsh as it may sound, that the council could eliminate somebody, I'm not opposed to that. Let me just tell you why. This past cycle, we got an application from Ivinson Memorial Hospital. I don't think that we need to start, going, I don't like that idea, because they probably have a bigger budget than we do, and would soon be getting, groups of doctors and urgent cares, and they'll come flooding in if they see that we're funding, a group like this. So we have 99 communities in the state of Wyoming. I think almost all the public libraries stand alone with what's called a mill tax, based on property values. And with the way property values have been growing, their budget has got to have almost doubled And so, and then we look at state and federally funded organizations that get lots of money, and some of them even come to us and say, we have a need, but they don't disclose that they have a foundation or large endowments or something, where all we're looking at is something that they bring to us and say, wouldn't you just do this and this for us? I think that we need to be very careful that we use this money to go assist those that have great need, instead of those that would just like to, have additional funds for what they're doing. I know that I look at the airport, and they get $1 million a year, but we are tied by the state and the county and us to match money so that they can, use that. I'm not opposed to that, but I think that sometimes we have to reach the point where we say, which of these organizations can stand alone, without our support, and which ones really not totally, but that seriously depend upon us for support in order to maintain their level of service. And that's what I want to focus on. Who can we help the most, and who can become independent if we let them?
Yeah, I think that by using the minimum standards and requirements that some of these people have incorporated, that if you wanted to, I could definitely reach out to them and see what those minimum requirements are, what the stipulations are, and things that they have to meet in order to basically qualify for application. So that would be something that I could definitely look into more with you.
Councilor Pierce, did you have a question?
I was just going to ask Nancy if she had any takeaways that didn't end up on here that you would consider to be really good recommendations for us. And I think you started kind of going down that path, but if you have anything else to add, I think that would be great. And aside from that, I really love some of the comments that Councilor Shumway said in terms of what our goal, ultimate goals should be or could be
Sure.
with this.
Yeah, so my thoughts are, I do like the process where each of you puts in your recommended amount, right? Because I feel that is a fair type of situation and way to come to resolution. I think it's also a lot quicker. I think, though, that imposing those standards that applicants must meet, I think that's good as well, because then that way you, as a council member, and giving the awards and funding the money to the community, can feel good about what you're supporting. And I think too, as Councilor Richardson mentioned, that Casper utilizes their annual goal as maybe a way to look at where these funds can be best utilized, that may be a consideration as well. I think when you put in those kind of like little guidelines and determinations, it just kind of gets the money to where we want it to be. A lot of them, they focused on, I will say that, I think it was it? Casper, yes. So with their recreation, working together with Visit Casper, again, it's things to promote the city and the community, and those are kind of like our goals. We want to help our community, and I think that aligns with whatever goals you guys set. And I think I think it's a good, pursuit.
Councilor O'Doherty, and then back to Councilor Pierce.
I want to concur that I like the idea of having guidelines on the application. Like, for example, is your budget greater than the city of Laramie? You're not eligible. I mean, that didn't occur to me, but we're trying to be a good community partner, and so I would like it would save the applicants time if we had some guidelines that we had right on the application, so that we So we're not wasting their time or ours, and things that we can agree on. So I like that idea.
Councilor Pierce.
So one of those guidelines I think we should maybe consider is if they're also getting rec board funding, because there might be a little bit of overlap and potential double dipping in that fund as well. If we could look at that. And I do love the Casper idea of, because the 5th cent is approved every 4 years, or has been for the last now 20, 30, 40 years here in town. Could we do this maybe like every 4 years like they do in Casper as opposed to annually? I don't know if council would be in agreement with that, but I think if we came up with since I've been on council, I think the monies that we give out is usually, kind of in that $250,000 range, and if we just capped at $1 million or something for every 4 years, we could then do it once every 4 years, or maybe every 2 years if people would prefer that. But I think annually might be a bit much, really, when I think about it, because, I've sat through 11 of these, so they get to be pretty similar. I don't know if other council members have a similar opinion on that.
Councilor Somerville.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. So I'm going to apologize ahead of time. The audio has been almost non-existent in the chamber for about the last 10 minutes, and so I apologize if you guys have already said some of these things. I do like the idea of the guidelines. I did catch that much that seems to be something that's being discussed. I think that aligning it with the city's goals is important, and maybe something that we need to review. I don't know that I would go every 4 years. I'm actually pretty hesitant to do every 2, just because of the needs of nonprofits. It's sometimes hard to predict out 2 years in terms of how we're focusing that money. I know that these grants, traditionally, they're pretty low-hanging fruit for organizations to apply for. There's not a lot of strings attached. There's not a lot of reporting. We allow them to use it for operations. So maybe some discussion about the year versus 2 years would be good. But I would like to also throw out there that I think the Casper situation where they're eliminating applicants is something we need to look at. One of my frustrations with this program has been, while I understand all the council members putting in their individual amounts and coming to an amount, I think it results in some games being played a little bit by applicants where they ask for way more money because they figure if they ask for more, then it'll average out and they'll actually get what they want. So I don't know that we're getting true requests in terms of what their actual need is. I also think that if you severely underfund an applicant, then maybe they shouldn't receive funding at all. It almost can put them in a worse position if they receive, 20% of what they asked, but that's really not going to get it done for them. Receiving that funding in the first place might not be in the best situation. And we've had years in the past, since I've been on council, where we'll have only, we'll have an organization pop up that only gets maybe 1 or 2 council members allocating funds to it. And so I'd really like to see us move through a process where we could eliminate those applications. And I don't know if the way that Casper does it with an elimination round would be a good idea, or maybe we set that we're only going to accept 20 applications, or maybe we rank the applications like you do with the rec board, and when we're out of money, we're out of money. But if we are going to fund an organization, we fund their entire request. Something along those lines, I think, would maybe help us use the money a little bit better and make it more effective out in the community. And I do think that we should probably also do a better job at taking a look at those post reports when they come in. Exactly how was the money spent? and reviewing those expenditures to make sure that, again, we're using the money well and we're being good stewards. So Nancy, I really appreciated the research that you did, and I think there's some good ideas in there. I think I'd like to take a couple of those and then move it even a step further. Thank you.
Councilor Richardson.
Thank you. I've got just a couple of thoughts here. One of the things that we have done when evaluating grant applications is do a ranking system. So you have a 1, 2, 3. Everybody would rank it a 1, 2, or 3, or perhaps in this case, a 1 or a 2. All of the 2s are just automatically left off the board. So you could do that individually on the ranking sheets, and then you could have a session where you discuss the remainder of those. I really like the idea, actually, of, I know it takes time, but if this were a multi-year grant, which a lot of our grantees have said they would like, because then they're only looking to have to do one final report and one application, perhaps every 2 years or 3 years. But that would give us one meeting where we could debate those that we have already narrowed down to being our top choices. And to whose point, Councilor Somerville, I had a nonprofit tell me actually that he thought he could completely game the city council system, because the more you put up, the more likely the council member will give a higher percentage. He said, I do not do that. We only ask what we need, but you can see how it would work that way. And so maybe it's also looking at something about, and this can be tough if you have an organization that has very limited organizational budget, but it's a percentage of their budget that they can request. So you can't ask for more than 25% of your budget or something like that. I like that. I think that's it. I think those are all of my comments, sorry.
Councilor Pierce.
Sorry, I'm also thinking maybe we need to survey our applicants to, tell them that we're talking about, making some changes and learning what other communities are doing, and have them suggest to us what they would see as an improvement or not. I don't know. I mean, I'm sure. I mean, if I were running one of these places, having to do this every year, may not really excite me, but having it to do every couple of years with a little more detail and a few more guidelines might actually be a lot better. I don't know.
Councilor O'Doherty.
I like the 2-year idea because our terms are, well, they're 4 years, but it's a different council every 2 years, and also our budget is 2 years. So I know it's different funds, but I could see going to 2 years. But I also think that what if you see that an organization is not using it in the best way, or had some accounting problems, that they ran into trouble, I would like to, so that's one of the reasons I kind of like every year, because different things come up, and so anyway, but I'd be up for doing 2-year grants.
Councilor Gabriel.
Thank you, Vice Mayor, and I apologize if this has been discussed previously, but I was wondering either to Nancy or the city manager, I'm a little confused on how some of these organizations come to us kind of out of the blue. For instance, an after-school program, a good program that teaches science, I remember came to us, and I think it was the first time they asked us for funds, and it sounded like a very good program. And then we've had a number of kind of clothing cottages, or to help some of the underprivileged people come to the city in recent years. And I was just wondering how some of these organizations actually qualify to ask the city, or is that the question we're asking tonight, whether the council wants to say, of course, you can ask for money?
Thank you. Councilor Gabriel, through you, Mayor, basically, if they're a nonprofit, they can apply. The council have never given any, further restrictions, if you will. And so when Nancy would receive an inquiry or I would receive an inquiry, we just send them to the process. Years and years ago, we came up with those 3 categories to kind of group them in like categories, just to kind of help you all work through that, recognizing that they are a very diverse bunch. Some might be the trap club, right, which is extremely different than the soup kitchen. So we've created those 3 categories, but that is something staff did and never really knew if council wanted it, frankly. But yeah, that's all that they have to be as a not-for-profit.
Okay, thank you.
I have just one more comment.
Councilor Richardson.
I think this is going to be my last one, pretty sure. The other thing I would say, basing it on our goals is nice because it does give us kind of those guardrails, but I also then, I think about the vital services that are in our community and how we are the poorest county or one of the poorest counties, depending on the year. And that while sometimes those things like the soup kitchen, like interfaith, may not align with our city goals either. So thinking about how we want to address that too.
I just had a couple things I wanted to say. When I first was faced with this, it was really a daunting task. I needed to develop some sort of a methodology. So my methodology was to total the requests and then to do the percentage of what was actually available versus what was being determined. And then I would go through and reduce everything by that. And then to look at the percent of the request related to the total amount. And to see where one organization was asking for 1/3 of the pot, that didn't gain me at all. It worked the opposite way. So I liked the idea of that there are limits to the amount that can be requested, and if your total budget is one amount, you can't ask for 50% of your operating expenses, that there would be some kind of limit, and that I'm not left with arbitrarily reducing them while they're asking too much and things. My thought about the 4-year is we have such an ever-changing environment. It makes me a little uncomfortable 4 years that we commit that money and then COVID-2 comes, and suddenly we need the money to be used in a very different way. But it could be streamlined 2 years. I think I could work with that. I do prefer the vital services, though I think some of the others are very important to the quality of our community, but we are one of the lowest income, medium income in the state, and I think that our citizens really do utilize and need the support that we give them through some of these vital services. And then regarding goals, sometimes when we're making goals, if we know, some of the conversation has been, well, we know that's already been taken care of, we're already allotted money for that, so why put it in a goal? So I think that we would have to be more careful about our goals, that we would have to have goals about the public good and things that aren't necessarily in our goals right now. So those are my comments. Councilor Shumway.
Thank you, Your Honor. I think this has been very helpful for me. I'm sure it's been helpful for all of us. I appreciate the thoughts that have come out, like sometimes, they try to trick the way they do this by doubling what they need and expecting to get maybe if we got half of that, that's more than we'd be asking for. One thing that I think that we have not ever done that may be an idea is there is a group that does this year-round, and that's United Way. And if we could just get a working group to go sit down with them and just say, here's our list of people, tell us what you know about these 26 applicants, I think we'd get a lot of insights because, they look very deeply into all of these organizations. They know who has a large endowment. They know who has a separate foundation. They know who is, has the greatest needs in the community. And I think we could maybe have that working group and then just have a chance where that we could get a report from that group on, as we, move into the allocation of these funds that may be helpful for us, because sometimes I never know. If someone comes, and says, we have, for example, the foster closet for foster care, I had a lot of insight into that. And by the way, they moved all their clothing out, and that was something that they got rid of. And I thought, I wouldn't have, even though it's very dear to me, the foster care program, I wouldn't have given them anything. But maybe I'm cold and heartless, but I look at others, that I think, for example, I don't think ever that the downtown clinic has ever asked for more than what they think is reasonable. I have never seen them had the request. And so I always try to give them every penny they ask for. We can't give them more, but I think, they're being sincere, they're being honest, saying this is what our needs are. I'd like to have that from everybody, but I don't think we can. But I think we could get insights if we just sit down with people that do this, the board at United Way, and say, because they're the ones in the community that have been around for so long and they have the institutional knowledge, and they can give us a lot of direction.
But didn't United Way come to us?
They do. And I don't, that's another thing. Should we give them money? Because it's going to be distributed to the same people we distribute it to.
Right.
So it's kind of a wash.
Councilor Richardson.
Thank you. I have a question for you, Nancy. Oh, and I should also say, this person who told me about upping up what they could ask was not trying to imply that anyone else was. He was just saying he had thought about it, how he could do it. So let me clarify that a little bit. But my question for you is how cumbersome is this process for you?
I have actually, over the years, pretty much streamlined it. We've made that that worksheet that you give, it's all full of formulas and everything. The minute that I get an application in, the data's input right away. It's just become streamlined. I'm a firm believer in merging and doing all of that stuff. I work off of that master worksheet, and so whatever processes you guys want to go through, I can definitely make work. It's not terribly overburdening me. So yeah, whatever you guys want to work with, we can work on getting. I can reach out to these communities, get a little more information. Whatever you guys want to do, we can do a little more legwork on our end.
I don't think that many people kind of inflate their budgets, and I think those that do, it really sticks out, especially when the downtown clinic asks for something reasonable, or women's health asks for something very reasonable, and then all of a sudden you've got 25,000 for, something.
42,000.
Yeah. But
And maybe that's another reason to put those parameters in, right? Because then they're like, I don't know how much to ask for. We'll just throw it all out there.
yeah. Councilor Doherty.
Yeah, maybe we could simply limit that no award will exceed X amount of dollars, so that we don't have one or two agencies causing. Yeah. Although I think our vital services agencies probably need more than any, so I don't know what I would set that number at.
Any other comments or questions?
So just to kind of revisit that, some of the communities also require a more detailed outline of what projects and things that the monies are going to support. So other than, having them meet certain criteria, you can also request for additional details if they're not already provided for those projects or, events and things that they're doing. So I think that's another, point to maybe look at in considering the process, how you want to move forward with this.
So let's look at our calendar. I mean, it's, what is it, September? Almost October? We have a deadline typically in March. February?
Tuesday after President's Day.
February? Can we revisit before and have enough time to get out maybe a new-ish plan? Janine?
I think, Council, I think we can. I'm pulling up the deadlines, though, because we start notifying people in January. So we want to have a decision, I would say, by the end of the year. And if it's a complex change, just thinking out loud, it could be, if the changes are complex, we may have to solicit applications later in the new year than we typically do. Sound right? Yep. Okay. So you have a couple of work sessions in December still that are unfilled. I know that. I can pull these up real quick. Maybe we can be back here the first work session in December.
December 12th or the 26th.
Okay, I think the 28th we can turn it around, don't you, Nancy?
November?
Yeah, November 28th. So that'd be the Tuesday after Thanksgiving? Okay, we'll schedule that, and then hopefully we can make decisions then or in the early part of December, and that'll keep us on track, I think, of our usual schedule as best as possible. We'll see what happens. Does that work for you, Nancy? Okay.
Councilor O'Doherty?
Is that something that's going to need resolutions and stuff like that, or is it just you magically know? Yeah, do we have to, is that, I mean, we have a work session on it, but then what makes it firm?
My thought, through you, Vice Mayor, Councilor Jordy, I'm thinking at that work session, you can just give direction to us in terms of how you'd like us to administer your program. I don't necessarily feel like we need a resolution. If you want a resolution, we can bring you one. But I think if you all have consensus, and that's the hard thing to know, right, without a resolution, is, the council want to think about how you want to have that conversation amongst yourselves to understand that you have consensus about what direction you're giving us. But I'm comfortable with receiving direction if that's okay with you. If you would prefer to make it formal, we'll do that through resolution.
I think we're all, sorry, I mean,
Councilor Pierce.
yeah, I think we're all really supportive. I just think we're looking at a little more guidelines. I don't necessarily, who would vote no? I mean, nobody's going to vote no, I don't think.
So-
Except for maybe Joe. That's what I always think when I think of Councilor Trump, like cold, heartless. That immediately comes into my brain.
City Manager?
If I could recap real quick, maybe, just to make sure that I'm kind of on the same page as far as where you'd like to see maybe some changes. That might help me and Nancy to come back with what you need. So here were the notes I made. Maybe we need to be thinking about, first of all, we'll survey our community partners, asking them what are better ways this program could serve your organization's needs, and do you have recommendations for how we might refine the process? Then we can put together a suggestion as to how you might conduct an elimination round similar to what Casper did, or at least a priority round, right? So something like Councilor Richardson said, where maybe you take all of the applicants and you rank choice vote them 1, 2, 3 or something, so you understand where the council as a body, where your highest priority agencies are and where the highest priority agencies are not. So we can sketch out a process for that you can look at. Then it sounds to me like for the application materials, you've got a couple other questions you might like to ask. One is maybe to include the council's adopted goals and ask the applicants to tell us how their work or priorities for spending that money align, if at all, with your goals adopted for the year. And then also ask on the application if the agency is receiving any other funds. I've jotted down rec mill, I think Councilor Shumway said. Councilor Pierce, I think, said county funds, or maybe I mixed the two of you up. But the county does give out similar grant funds, right? Although they do it after you do, they do it later in the summer. But we could still ask that on the application so you would know if they receive money from the county or not. And then I also jotted down here maybe tourism grants. We'll think about what other local grants are available through local taxes and whatnot. And then the third item I had as far as a change maybe you'd like to make is maybe do this every 2 years with the biennial budget instead of every year. And we can kind of sketch out a process for that as well. And how we would handle year 2 if there's a shortfall of some sort, right? So how do we inform the applicants of that? Right now in their contracts that we have them sign, we are explicit in saying, this is a promise made, but if some dramatic decline in city revenue were to occur, we may not honor the contract, basically. Of course, we've never had to do that, and that would be a catastrophic situation. But we can think about if you do this process on a 2-year cycle with the biennial budget being built, what do we, how do we project the amount we'll have in year 2, and do we need any other caveats other than what I just described to you as far as saying if there's something that declines in revenue, we may not honor the second year commitment? And thinking about what that means for the applicants. I think they recognize that, right? Pretty much everybody's been involved in nonprofit somewhere along the way. And I think all of us that have done that understand that sometimes granting agencies, things change for them. So, did I miss anything? Did I hit the high points? Nancy, did you have anything else on your list? No. Okay.
And Nancy, I'm wondering if various counselors have thoughts and ideas, would it be helpful for them to write those down and send it to you in an email to communicate that with you?
Yeah.
So if you all discover some unique things or come up with some ideas, if you'll forward those to Nancy, then she can begin to collate and incorporate that. Councilor Pierce?
Yeah, and I think too, it'll allow the mayor and Councilor Newman a chance to add their 2 cents as well.
Thank you so much. I appreciate the work that you put into this.
You're welcome. Thank you. Thank you.
So I open the floor for public comments. If you're if you're with us, please come to the podium. If you're online, raise your hand. Seeing none, we'll move on to council updates. And Councilor O'Doherty?
I don't think I have any updates. Thanks.
Councilor Shumway?
Today, we interviewed an 8th applicant for the Laramie Youth Council, so that will come before us on, today we interviewed an 8th individual for the Laramie Youth Council, which will come before us on the 3rd, I believe, of October, which gives us a good group to work with. Also, this week, I think there was 3 of us that went for the Laramie Youth Council walk at Pilot Hill, and again, that's one of their goals, and I think that not as great a turnout as I would hoped, but I think there was a lot of good that was accomplished there. This past week, I think it was maybe a week or two ago, I attended the WAM board meeting in Shoshone. The meeting was supposed to go for 2 hours. It went for 3.5, and we didn't accomplish much. Meeting was too long. They're changing to a new attorney because the attorney that WAM has taken on the role of a city attorney in the city of Evanston. And so we're looking at 3 applicants, and they're going to be interviewing. We selected 2 that they'll interview, and then we'll have a new attorney at WAM. Also, they did the evaluation of the director. And one other thing that they did was gave us a legislative review and input from the board on the impact that we're making. We feel like we have a very, very good person that works as the lobbyist for WAM. He does an excellent job, has good rapport with everybody, and I think we got a lot of good things that went through for the municipalities. One other thing, they continue to reach out for the number 99. We have 98 communities that are in WAM. Rock Springs has decided not to. They receive all the benefits, and we can't think of any way to bring them in because they don't want to pay dues, and they've been holding off. So we're going to continue to reach out for them, hopefully someday have all 99, so it's everyone in the state that participates. The meeting, I shouldn't say we didn't get a lot done because we did get quite a bit done. I feel sorry for our city manager. She was there and was last on the agenda. And I think your comments were, maybe 2 minutes long, but we're moving. And if I get this right, we're moving to where your association is going to go from 4 states and focus in on just Wyoming, correct?
That is correct. The Wyoming City Manager Administrator Group has sort of not incorporated. We formalized our group as a state association. We've never been that. We've just participated in the regional. So we are going to be within weeks like the official Wyoming City Manager Administrator Group.
And just in closing, I stayed in Shoshone because I don't do well driving at night, so I went up there the day before and stayed at the Love Motel. And if anyone wants to pay $65, you're paying 2 times more than you should for that motel.
What did we say about you before?
Cold and heartless.
Cold and heartless. That's what I thought.
Councilor Pierce, do you have anything to report?
Yeah, thank you. As I age, the Planning Commission meeting was last night, just like less than 24 hours ago or 26 hours ago. And I'm trying to remember some of the things they talked about. So, which is really bad, but I've been working hard too at the day job. So, the Casper Aquifer, they're making some decisions related to the boundaries that, just so you know, did not get the Planning Commission like all crazy. So everything passed and everything's fine. And I felt comfortable. If Chris Moody was a yes, I figured we were all good. So pretty much left it at that. But that's it for me.
Councilor Richardson?
No updates.
Councilor Gabriel?
Attended the Albany County Joint Powers Board, Tourism Board meeting last week, and no significant activity, but the board continues to work very hard on bringing tours to Laramie, and overnight stays have been very good. They had an excellent August and September, and they are looking forward to another good year, but that's the only update I have.
And I just wanted to make a comment about the Laramie Youth Council. Counselor, before I make a comment, Counselor Somerville, do you have anything to report? Hearing none. Well, I just wanted to say that I thought that the Youth Council walk at Pilot Hill has the potential to be a very fun event. And though turnout wasn't as much as we would have liked, what I loved is that the students, volunteers, and counselors immediately went into problem-solving mode. We began to discuss the timing of the walk, how to dovetail with other activities in the city to increase participation. And I feel like the students walked away not hanging their heads, but feeling like, all right, we did it, now we know what to do next time. So I thought it was a really positive experience, and I look forward to it again next year.
Can I add one thing to that?
You may.
Thank you. I want to give a huge kudos to Nancy because she threw all of that together and really pulled us all in and got it going. So big kudos to Nancy.
Thank you, Nancy. Yes.
Vice Mayor, I just want to thank the counselors too for participating, because I think that speaks volumes to the youth as well. You know, even though we had low participation, it still showed that you are involved in our community and, you know, you're looking to support the youth in our community. So I appreciate that as well.
Thank you. City Manager?
Mayor and Council, I just thought I'd share with you, Nancy just reminded me about this, but just in way of an announcement out of my office, we noticed yesterday a really great article from Outside Magazine about Laramie. Have any of you seen that?
I did see a little bit about that.
Yeah, so here's the headline: the most affordable mountain town in the West. And this fellow did really great research about living in Laramie and comparing it to other mountain towns in the West. And it was very complimentary to the community. What really struck me was when he talked about the cost of living and how it is in fact lower cost of living here than in pretty much any other mountain town in the West. And so I thought that, you know, it's refreshing in a way to kind of step back from our stress that I and I know you as elected officials have about the cost of housing and things like that, and recognize that, you know, compared to other communities with similar mountain type amenities and recreation amenities and whatnot, this is a pretty great town and very affordable. One of my favorite parts, though, he talked about how in his estimation the way to gauge affordability is on the cost of a pint. And apparently we rank fairly well in the terms of the cost of a pint of beer. So.
Compared to square footage in New York.
Right. Anyway, great article. We're gonna amplify it a bit through our own public information, so you'll be able to, and I just sent you the link to it if you want to read it. But
Thank you.
a nice little write-up about Laramie.
So, counselors, if you can take a moment to review the agenda. Nancy?
Vice Mayor, I had a thought this afternoon. I'm not sure what direction the council wants to go, but we did place the resolution to appoint the youth council member on the consent agenda. Just wanted to know what direction the council wants to go with that.
That's what I was going to bring up, if we could move that to the regular agenda so we could recognize that person if we appoint them, which.
I agree.
Great.
I've really appreciated their being here, or at least recognizing them.
Are you ready for questions?
Yes.
I have a couple. On 15, on the regular agenda, is that just a ownership change on that resort liquor
Oh, yeah.
liquor license, Nancy?
Thanks.
That is an ownership change. You're correct,
Okay,
Counselor.
so it's, everything's staying, okay.
Yeah.
It's not coming from somewhere else. Then the other thing on 17, I didn't ask this because I thought we should have known. The reason the city doesn't pick up that, there's been a lot of requests since Republic took over on the waste disposal, is it, and the people have said they want to go to the city, but the city says our trucks don't fit the dumpsters. Are those dumpsters owned, and this is my question, are the dumpsters owned by the individual businesses, or are they owned by Republic, which used to be WDC? So, because if they're owned by the businesses, then I can see, otherwise they're going to have to buy their own dumpsters to fit the city's pickup.
I apologize, Counselor Shengwei, I wasn't listening closely enough to the beginning of your comment. Can I connect with you afterward and understand it better, and we'll make sure we have an answer for you?
Any other comments or suggestions? Well then, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you very much.